What's up, everybody? Welcome aboard to Bubba's Bottom Line, and great to be here, even though the week wasn't as we expected. It was a crazy week last week, and of course, what happened? Well, you first had the Donald Trump Jr. announcement about emails with Russia, and of course sent the market soaring down with, in a 20-minute span, the markets broke 160 points. And in the next 20 minutes, the market traded all the way back. And then, of course, that was the low of the week. And we continued to spike higher for who knows why. Of course, we know that Fed Chair Janet Yellen, Fed Chair Janet Yellen, what a joke. Anyways, the Fed Chair Janet Yellen put together her dovish commentary in front of the Humphrey Hawkins testimony. And, of course, that continued to push markets higher. And we then had Janet Yellen at the same time, and out of the other side of her mouth, say, well, I think we're going to start to liquidate our bond positions. And of course, that was her way of giving you a backdoor rate hike. You can look at it any way you want, but if they start to sell bonds, it's going to bring bond prices down, interest rates higher. So in my eyes, it's a backdoor interest rate hike. Nobody picked it up, nobody talked about it, and the markets didn't care. All right. We have the yield curve, which is the difference between the spreads between all the bonds, starting to flatten. The short-term rates are coming down, or the long-term rates are coming up to meet, which means that you could borrow money at 30 years for less than you can borrow money at 10, which is not the case yet, but it's certainly working that way, which would be an inverted yield curve. It's a mess. It is the typical mess that is created by our friends there, and of course, Friday, we had the culmination of new highs in the S&P. We already had new highs in the Dow. So the Dow and the S&P made new highs. The NASDAQ and the Russell got right there. And of course, when you look at it, all right, we had lousy retail sales. Bank earnings were just mediocre. Yes, they did beat on the top line. But again, we continue with the same situation of contraction. Okay, these companies aren't growing. They're manipulating money to make better earnings. Jobs suck, so we're not getting the true growth that we were looking for. It's an amazing factor that nobody seems to get that, but this brings us back to what we've talked about for an extended period of time, that chase for yield. And that chase for yield is, of course, a big problem. I mean, because you have people pouring in money into markets that are not concerned that the markets will ever go down again. During the week, we heard the terms, the new markets. The new markets. Is this going to be different this time? Well, I don't know. Let's see. We had the great jubilation in the 29 year. We had 87, and we had 90 in 2001 and 2008, and plus others. But yet, we're going to have a new market. This time is different. We don't have to worry about things. Valuations are not important. Money is not important. Jobs are not important. Growth's not important, because we got a new market. Okay, it's brand new. It never happened before. And of course, they said that in every major bubble in history. And of course, well, let's see. What do we if we look back at some of the stats from the week? Restaurants are in their worst collapse since 2009. Let's see, 2000. Oh yeah, that was right after the meltdown. Okay, so we've got restaurants starting to fail. Now, what does that mean? Well, it means a lot. All right, it means a lot. Just as it meant a lot when certain businesses started to close, and I'll use the ones that I probably detest more than anything else, is when they closed down basically the trading floors, when they brought everything to electronic trading. Why am I so angry about that? Well, think of it this way. If any common exchange, let's say they had 5,000 traders at that exchange. Those 5,000 traders employed, let's say, one clerk apiece. So that made 10,000 employees. The back offices employed, let's say, 10 people each. So all the way we've lost, 1 million jobs. All right. So it's not just the 1 million jobs there. Okay. Then you take all the parking garages, all the restaurants, all the little convenience stores around there, And at the end of the day, you've probably eliminated 2 million jobs that did a good job, not to mention the landlords and everything else that goes on there. So we can continue to be happy and jubilant about these great earnings, and we can continue to be jubilant about all the good things that are happening. And the bottom line is we're turning into crap. Okay, that's the bottom line, is we're turning into a society that's going to be pretty much socialist pretty soon if we don't catch it before it gets too far away. You continue to see the waste, the taking away of jobs. Now we're starting to hit the restaurant industry, which those aren't even good paying jobs except for tips, but you're eliminating those jobs. And then that takes care of the busboys and more landlords and more other things. So where does it go? I mean, you know, it's like central banks have been more of the destruction to this country than anything else. Central banks are never do anything right. They always pick wrong, and especially in front of a major market bust, which we're probably going to have soon. Now, we'll get into more of that later, because obviously you can bet that that's going to be in my commentary piece, the overall Fed and economist. But at the end of the day, okay, there's so many things that are very disturbing that are going on right now. For the example of financial martial law. Do you realize that banks like JP Morgan no longer take cash payments for like mortgages or for car payments? You know, I walked into a JP Morgan one time, a Chase office, and wanted to get change for a $100 bill. They wouldn't give it to me. I had to prove that I had an account there. And I've only been banking there for 20 years. It's becoming a part where we're starting to give up more of the freedoms that we have earned. We are being more dictated to on how to live, how to eat, how to do whatever it is we're going to do. I mean, you realize in Chicago, we just came up with a sugar tax, almost like that jackass in New York, on pop. So whether it's sweetened or artificially sweetened, you pay 1 cent an ounce. And everybody goes, oh, 1 cent an ounce, 12 cents a can, no big deal, right? Well, at the end of the day, it becomes a huge deal. It becomes a big deal in margins and things like that. I mean, this is the problem when you have imbeciles running the asylum. You have a situation that continues to beat and take the money out of your pocket and my pocket, and I'm getting really sick and tired of them stealing my money. All right, I work hard for my money, as you do, and all they're doing right now is taking away our money by adding more taxes so they can take care of their ignorant, stupid, clueless programs that don't need to be taken care of, instead of letting the free markets reign. All right, but now take a look at one of the things that I'm sure many of you follow, and that's Bitcoin. Right? Bitcoin has now collapsed 30% or 33% in the last few weeks. Now, we actually on this show said that we felt that Bitcoin was in a bubble and that it needed to sell off. And then I said on the show, I thought that, you know, when it got down to like 2,500, it might hold. And of course it's not, it's down to 2,000. Now again, I don't know in my own eyes whether it's a viable currency or not. I don't know in my eyes if it's going to work itself. I do know that the blockchain technology is big. I know that that's going to work. I do know that although Goldman Sachs gave the old poo-poo to what Bitcoin was, about 6 months later they invested heavily into the strategy and the technology and everything else. So again, another way of Goldman saying, hey, you know what? Oh yeah, we're gonna take this market too. And it's come to a point where it's just totally irresponsible. It's totally a bunch of BS. And we had, just a couple of years ago, we had this dramatic speech on spoofing the markets and all this other stuff. Meantime, the biggest offenders are right in front of you. They're out there every day in the news. And it's getting to a point where there's a lot of issues here. And it's going to be a bigger mess as we go. And I think that we need to, as Barney Fife used to say from Andy Griffin, we need to nip it in the bud right now. And of course, that takes work from the average guy. And that is not something that I foresee in the middle, because we've become far too lax at actually trying to take charge of our own lives. We've been far too lax at trying to take charge of how to move forward, and it's pissing me off. But, you know, obviously, I'm gonna have to add a Bubba's bitch to my, you know, I do that on my Monday call. I'm gonna have to add a Bubba's bitch to Bubba's Bottom Line as well. In the meantime, this is Bubba's Bottom Line. Todd Bubba Horwitz. We're gonna step out here for a break. Make sure you get the Bubba Show every single day. LibertyTalk.fm. You can download it or you can listen to it live at 2 to 3 Eastern Time every single day at LibertyTalk.fm. This is Bubba's Bottom Line, real markets, real people. We're going to step out here for a break. We will be right back after the break. Bubba's Bottom Line coming right back to you. Welcome back to Bubba's Bottom Line. Todd Bubba Horwitz with you. And, well, I don't know. I don't know where to start. We start with maybe healthcare and, of course, another bill that's not going to pass. And the obstructionism in Washington is just so pathetic. And the people in Washington are so pathetic. You have finally a president that is not politically motivated. You have a president that is not financially motivated. Yet all the focus is what's wrong with Donald Trump, not what's right with him. And you have a bunch of idiots, a bunch of self-centered garbage that only cares about what's going in their pocket. All they care about is the dough. All they care about is how much of this they can steal. And it's become to a point where I think it's past the point of acceptable. I don't think it's ever acceptable, but every single bill that goes by has to have something attached, which means, again, you and me have to pay more taxes to help them fund their programs that shouldn't be in business to begin with, especially because they can't even track what they do. And more money is thrown away through illegal collection of welfare, disability, food stamps. I mean, food stamps, I have no problem with helping someone pay their food bills. But in the meantime, they're buying booze, they're buying cigarettes, and they're buying things that they're not supposed to buy. But if you go to a small store, the owner's not going to say no. They're going to give it to you because they need the money too. So here we are in a system of just giving it away because they have the middle class. Because the wealthy, because of the central banks, have gotten so much wealthier, and they've kind of fed them an income stream. Just for those reasons, right? They fed them because of what they can do. Again, when you're rich, and I don't mean, you know, like a millionaire. I mean, when you've got a lot of money and you have a lot of liquid money, in times like today, you can make a fortune on top of the fortune you already have. And that is facilitated by the Federal Reserve because of their policy. So what it really means is that we're getting screwed because the rich are getting richer and they are pounding and squeezing the middle class into a grape. And maybe they'll turn this into wine because I'm whining. And I can't take it anymore. It is ridiculous. And if you want the model that's good, we're going to follow, and you want the model that's going to fail, look at the European entitlements, the European welfare state, the unsustainable welfare state, we'll call it. 7.2% of the world population eats up into that. That debt and that welfare state is 7.2% of the world. Is using the European welfare system. 23% of the world's GDP is handled by the welfare state in Europe. 58% of the world's spending is handled within that unsustainable welfare state. Now, is that what we're looking for here? Did we not go to war in 1776 to get rid of all this crap? Did we not want the independence to let every person out there have an opportunity to go become a capitalist and make what they want to make if they want to make it? Okay, you've got choices in the United States of America. You can work for a company and get benefits and build a nice career, and there's nothing wrong with that. But you also have the ability in this country to become an Apple or a Microsoft or any other company that does very well. I mean, there's a place in Chicago, started in Chicago in a little trailer, a hot dog stand called Portillo's, right? They're now over $1 billion corporation, right? that started out of a little bit of a little trailer on a busy street selling hot dogs for 50 cents or whatever the hell they sold them for. Now what do you have? You've got a position that they're even trying to limit all these. Here's a company that builds things for people. They create jobs. They use suppliers which create more jobs. But yet we've got people trying to step in the way of all of these things that work to make it so that those guys can get their own pensions and their own payroll and not have to worry about it and continue to accumulate wealth by screwing the American public. I think that it's a tragedy when you look at it. And unfortunately, with the current structure of our government, I don't see a lot better. We had this big talk about healthcare last week. That was another thing that might have propelled the markets, that they're going to force a vote. But what's the difference? You've got too many issues on the outside. All right, we've got the debt ceiling coming up soon. Now you know that I'll predict now that this healthcare might be tied to the debt ceiling, which will be tied to some idiotic bill that the Democrats want now. And again, I'm not blaming the Democrats here. That's just, this is how it works. The party in power, when they have to raise the debt ceiling, has to pass it, and typically the other party sticks some piece of crap bill that they couldn't get through under normal circumstances because of almost a moment of desperation. They have to agree to it. Now, why don't we, I don't know this, okay, I probably should have researched it before I'm going to open my mouth, but I'm going to say it anyways. All right. Why didn't we can Donald Trump stop the debt ceiling? Can Donald Trump say no debt ceiling hike? And can we close the government down for a while? Okay, let's see how all those people who are so happy to take that money feel when they don't get paid. Let's see if they show up for work when they're not getting paid. All right, that I would like to see. That is something that I don't understand. And again, I'm personally talking out of my, the other side. But to me, that makes logic sense. So I'm going to go ahead and finish it. But let's let the government shut down. What, are we going to worry that people aren't going to buy our bonds anymore because because we're going to get our debt rating raised? Oh, really? Right. The biggest country in the world is going to get downgraded, and we're not going to be able to sell our bonds to people to borrow money because we're downgraded. Do you really think that's really a possibility, as is preached to you every single day? Do you think our debt rating matters to anybody? We're the biggest in the world. We print all the money we want. Are we really thinking, or do we believe that anybody says that that's going to happen? And if you do, I think you better think back a little bit and remember that the United States is the biggest economy by 5 or 6 times. All right, the United States is the most powerful. All right, and our biggest problem is we got the most putzes and crooks in politics, in the Senate, in the House, and all the way up from the state legislators, from the aldermen, all the way up to the top. You got a bunch of garbage. Okay, listen, I know there's a few that will care, but for the most part, they don't care. For the most part, they're out in it for themselves, as were almost every president that we've had so far. I would say, with the exception of Ronald Reagan. Again, I don't know what it was, but that would be more my thinking of how this all works. Because again, to be the president, you got to be willing to look like you're 40 when you go in and come out looking like you're 100, because it's basically a 24-hour job, and you've got to really get into it. And I got to tell you something. Like I said, I've said this 1,000 times. You might not like Donald Trump, but I don't know any president in my lifetime, and that would go back to Kennedy. I was too young to remember, but let's go back to Nixon and to the other guys there. Nobody's ever worked as hard as this man has worked, and he doesn't even need to be there. He's only there. He was never even a politician. He is trying to do one thing. He is trying to legitimately make America great again. I don't understand it, but we're going to step out here for a break before I have a meltdown, and we're going to come back. This is Bubba's Bottom Line. Make sure you check libertytalk.fm every single day at 2 Eastern. You can listen to the Bubba Show. You can also pick up the downloads there. Also get the Sporting Edge there for you as well. Make sure you check that out, and we're going to step out of break and come back with my commentary. It's all been like commentary, but I got more. We'll be back after the break with more Bubba's Bottom Line. Welcome back to Bubba's Bottom Line. Todd, Bubba Horwitz, and we'd like to call this real markets, real people, because that's what I try to do. I try to relate the reality to you, and here's reality, okay? Economists are stupid, all right? Now, they're not stupid in school. They're very smart. It takes a way upper education to get to be that position, all right? It takes even a higher education to get it done and be a part of the Federal Reserve. But at the end of the day, they have no clue. They don't know what's going on around them, and they don't make a decision about you and me based on the things that you and me have to go through to make a successful business move, to make a successful small business. They've got you cornered and screwed to no end. Now, I don't see any of them that really give a rat's ass about what you and I have to do to get there. They have no common sense. They're always wrong when it comes to these big bubbles. They're now trying once again to figure out how to get their ways out of what they've done. But if they'd have just left it alone in the first place, yes, we would have had some problems, but we'd be flourishing right now with new entrepreneurs and new business instead of letting the same old crap float and defending and saving these big banks that only get the bulk of the money. And not only the banks get the bulk of the money, not only the banks get the backstop of the Federal Reserve, which is why the stock markets keep going up, because the Feds we call it the Fed put, whatever you want to call it. And again, I have no problem with the stock market going up. I have a problem with why it's going up, because that will create the much bigger collapse when it does come. The farther it goes up, the more it's coming down. You can bet on it. You can look at 1,000 markets over years and see it. If you want anything recent to look at, you can just go back and look at the grain markets with the USDA report last Wednesday and see how dramatically they fell off of that ridiculous report. Again, government reports are ridiculous. They're old. They have nothing to do with what we're trying to do. And of course, the Fed and their economists live in that glass house that has no clue of what common sense is. That's what it is. They're not dumb when it comes to reading a book. They're probably a lot smarter than me. All right, they're very intelligent people. But when it comes to pure good old common sense, that you know what, you're out in the woods, you're stuck, you got to survive, they would never survive. All right, and that to me is more important than any other book smart that you could ever get, is because remember, if you study economic theory, depending on whose theory you study, you could get a different view. And we continue to carry on that ridiculous Keynesian economy, which we had. And again, I'm not saying that the other economies are better, that Western or Austrian are better economies. I think there's probably a better blend in between there. But in the meantime, what we got is garbage that all it does is create more garbage, all right? Garbage in, garbage out, and it creates the ability for the government to escape. It creates the ability for the banks to print more money, which is really pissing me off, that if I'm a bank, I can lend out, for every $100 I take in, I can lend out 900. I don't even need half of them to pay it back. I'm still going to make a lot of money. And the only thing I know is that if I go broke, then the Fed's going to come there and bail me out. And it's just so ridiculous. And if you put the philosophy behind the Fed, right now they are a private corporation, but they are tied to the government. They're private, but tied, all right? Their email address is nn.gov. Anyways, they don't, no current session of Congress or Senate wants to make the hardline decision of what needs to be done with entitlements and with all the things that drags them in votes, tax cuts, whatever it happens to be. And they all know that it needs to be done, all right? But what they don't want to do is they don't want to lose the votes. The Social Security needs to be revamped, okay? It's not going to work. It's going to go out of business. So right now, like I said, I got 2 years to go. I'm going for retirement the day on my birthday, I'm going right to the Social Security office and get my Social Security, because it ain't going to last. I may give it away, because I do give a lot of things away to the high school program and things like that, but I'm not going to let them keep it. Letting them keep it is like throwing it in the garbage can. I'd rather go to the track, all right? But in the meantime, they don't want to change anything because they don't want to rock the boat. It's economists don't know what to do, okay? And they don't. They're using a theory, all right? But then the people that are involved in getting everything through, they don't want to change it because they don't want to lose votes. Right? That's what career politicians have become. Voting machines that they don't give a shit about you and me. Right? What they care about is themselves. They're lobbyists. They're people that give them money. That's what they care about, and that's all it works out. And that's the way I see it. This was Bubba's Bottom Line. Todd Bubba Horwitz, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for being here, and I appreciate you. We'll see you next time right back here on Bubba's Bottom Line. Todd Bubba Horwitz. Have a great week, everybody. Thank you so much.